Hello everyone, welcome to Puzzle League, another tutorial episode of the Variety Sudoku Intermediate Series. My name's Eric, and today we'll be looking at the Killer Sudoku puzzle. First, we'll go over the rules together to make sure we understand the puzzle. Then we'll take a look at the workbook solving guide, and finally, I'll solve a complete problem from the beginning. Let's begin. So the rules are just like those of classic Sudoku with two additional rules. The small numbers represent the sum of all numbers in the corresponding colored cells. And each group of colored cells must only contain each number once. The small numbers I'm referring to are shown here in the corner of these cells. As you can see in this 6x6 example, each group of colored cells only has one instance of each number from 1 to 6. It's perfectly fine if the same number appears in the same color more than once. However, two numbers cannot repeat in the same group of color cells. I hope that's clear, but we'll be seeing lots of examples shortly. Now let's go through this example together. If you're following along, go to page 73 of your Variety Sudoku Intermediate Workbook. I'll be explaining each of the 4 progressions. In this first progression, the numbers in the green cells must sum to 6. The only 3 numbers from 1 to 6 that sum to 6 are 1, 2, and 3. We can't place the 1 in the bottom 2 cells due to the 1 in the last row, so the 1 is placed as shown here in red. Similarly, the yellow cells must sum to 8. The only 3 numbers that do this are 1, 2, 5, or 1, 3, 4. Since the number 1 appears in both combinations, we can be sure the number 1 exists among the yellow cells, and we can place it here, as shown in blue. Now in this second progression, there are 3 places where the sum has to be 12. Here, here, and here. However, you'll find that all 3 groups must contain the number 1, because the only 4 numbers that sum to 12 are 1, 2, 3, and 6, or 1, 2, 4, and 5. Both combinations require a 1. You might be thinking that, well, 2, 4, and 6 also sum to 12. But don't forget that every cell needs to be filled, so we need a combination of 4 numbers and not 3. In this green cluster, we see that we have to place the number 1 here, due to the ones in columns 4 and 6. This forces us to place the blue group's number 1 in this lower cell, and as a consequence, the second green group's number 1 in this cell. Now, the first column must sum to 21. Why, might you ask? Well, remember, each column must contain each number from 1 to 6. If you sum up all the numbers from 1 to 6, you get 21. We know the green cells must sum to 11, since we just placed the 1 here, and the 5 already exists in the last cell. Therefore, if we add 11 plus 5 plus 1 from this 1 that we placed, we get 17. And if you take 21 and subtract 17, well, you're left with the number 4, which we can place in this first cell, as shown in blue. Now in the third progression, the 4 and 6 must be placed as shown here in red. These cells in this fifth block must sum to 6, using up the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Which leads us to place 4 and 6 to complete this fifth block. Now for these cells to sum to 12, we need the numbers 1, which is already placed, 2, 3, and 6. We know this because the combination of 2, 4, 5 would not work due to the existence of numbers 4 and 5 in the column. We also know the number 4 of block 3 must be placed as shown here due to the 4s in the third row and the second column, which allows us to place the numbers 3 and 6 in blue. as the other combination of 4 and 5 that sum to 9 is not possible due to the 4 we just placed. I hope that's not too confusing. Now, using this candidate technique where we temporarily write down possible number placements, just like this here, we can finish the puzzle. Now, if you don't yet feel comfortable with Killer Sudoku, don't worry because I'll be solving workbook example 73 from the very beginning. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to pause the video and try it yourself first, and then come back if you get stuck or if you want to know how I solve these problems. Now, taking a look at the puzzle, I want to start with the third column because it has quite a few colored cells, and that gives us a few clues as to which numbers can go where. The third column is missing the numbers 1, 4, 5, and 6. We know that the number 1 cannot be placed in this cell because there is no other number available to us that sums to 11 when added to 1. Also, since 1 and 6 are the only two numbers we have that sum to 7, we know that these two cells must contain numbers 1 and 6. So we can place the number 1 here due to the 1 in the third row, and the number 6 here to make the sum equal to 7. For this cell, the only two numbers that are available to us that sum to 11 are 5 and 6. But since we already have a 6 in the third column, we know that the 5 must be placed here. And finally, to complete this third column, we can place the 4 in this last cell. We now know that this other yellow cell must contain the number 6 in order to sum to 11, and the fourth column is missing the numbers 2, 3, and 5. Since the only two numbers left that sum to 7 are 2 and 5, we can place the 2 in this cell, keeping in mind the 2 that is already in the third row, and place the 5 here. And then the 3 goes in this last cell. When I look at the fourth row, I notice that the only missing numbers are 3, 4, and 6. Since 4 and 6 are the only numbers that sum to 10, we can write them down as candidates for these cells, although we don't know which one goes where yet. The 3 must then go in this cell. The fourth block is now only missing the number 3, so we can also fill that in. Now if I take a look at block 3, I see that it's missing numbers 4 and 5. We know that the numbers in the blue cells must sum to 10, but between the numbers 4 and 5, we know that the number 4 should be placed in the blue cell. If we had placed the number 5, we would have had to place another 5 above, and that would have broken the rules of classic Sudoku. And so, we can fill in the third block. In the first block, we know the blue cell must contain the 6 in order for the sum to be 10. Now in this block, we're missing the numbers 1, 2, and 5. The 5 must be placed here due to the 5 in the first column. The 1 must be placed here due to the 1 in the first row. And lastly, the 2 can go in the last empty cell. The first row is missing the numbers 4 and 6. But we know the green cell must contain the 4. If we were to instead place the number 6, the bottom green cell would have had to contain the number 3 in order to sum to 9. And this would have once again broken the rules of classic Sudoku. Now we can place the 6 in the first row, as well as the 5 and 2 in the second row. Now due to the 6 in the last column that we just placed, we know for sure that this cell must contain the 4, and this cell must contain the 6. In the first column, the only missing numbers are 4 and 6, and the 4 must go here, and the 6 here, due to the 4 and 6 in the fourth column. And now if you take a look at the sixth block, we're missing the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5. The only three numbers that sum to 10 are 2, 3, and 5. But due to the 5 in the fifth column, the 5 must be placed here. And due to the 2 in the last row, the 2 here, and the 3 goes here. And then the last number of this sixth block can be filled. This fifth row is missing the number 3, and the last row is missing the number 1. And that's it, we've completed the puzzle. Now to check if all the rules are met, we must see if every row, column, and block contains each number from 1 to 6. We must make sure that all the sums are satisfied, and that there are no repeating numbers within color groups. The solutions are in the back of your workbook as always, but make sure you try the puzzle yourself first. I hope that helped.